Welcome to Disabled Expectations. When you're a dad raising a child with a disability, nothing is as you planned. These are the raw, honest stories of dads whose lives changed the day they heard a diagnosis and who continue to show up, adapt, and fight for their families every day. This isn't about lowering expectations, it's about redefining them. I'm Andy, and this is Disabled Expectations. Well, thanks for joining us. This is Disabled Expectations, and today I've got my friend Dave Hodge, who I'm so excited for you to meet and, of course, get to know on a deeper level. But Dave, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Andy. I'm glad to be here. It's good that I've really enjoyed the times that we've met each other at the events you sponsor, and I'm glad I could be part of this as well.
Yeah, Dave and I met at Certain Hope community events, which my wife and I run, and it's just been one of the bonuses of what we do is we get to meet so many amazing families.
Yeah.
And Dave actually reached out to me about getting lunch, and I was just so excited to do this. So I thought, Dave, we could just start with like an easy question. All right. I did some basic Googling of your name.
Oh,
are you nervous?
I'm not the one that was the hockey announcer.
Okay.
That's a different Dave.
I think I have the right one, but could you just tell us real quick what all these letters after your name mean?
Oh,
you've got the coolest after name letters I've ever seen.
Yeah, the different things. I mean, okay, I'll give you the middle of the road story. Okay. When I grew up, I was not a very good student, and when I was in a small town, and I passed my classes without having to apply myself too much. And then when I went to college, I carried that same attitude with me. So as a 18-year-old college student, I was a very poor student, and I didn't do so well in my college. And I felt, like it didn't bother me at the time. Like, I was young, I didn't care. But then, how they say like the men's brain, there's like the frontal lobe that shows up when you're 25.
Right.
Okay, by that time, and it's true. One day I remember waking up and thinking, this is my life. Like that was an actual thought I had. Like,
wow,
it's happening. And by the time I was 25, been married for a few years, had a house and a mortgage and a kid. I mean, like I was living out life, but like I was just kind of following one step after another. I wasn't really thinking about things or setting a direction. So anyhow, I get to my career, and I was like, all of a sudden I start thinking, should I have done a better job? What might have been, sort of a thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I guess I hit my midlife crisis a little early or something. I don't know. But like all of a sudden I get into this career. I'm an investment advisor, and not sales. It was studying stocks and bonds. And then the first credential I got was the CFA. That is and I was attracted to it because the first thing anyone told me about it is, oh, that's an extremely difficult credential. It's going to rob you of 3 years of your social life. I was like, that sounds interesting. I might be good for that. Yeah. So, and that's true. It actually does. It takes about 1,000 hours to get over 3 years. Each test is extremely difficult. Only 45% of the people pass it. So, but for me, it was my chance to get a mulligan. I was doing it right. I was gonna take the test. I was gonna do it right. I was gonna be perfect. So I had kind of, now that my brain was all wired or whatever, I thought, well, I should really, prove it to myself. So that's where the first one came from. And then a few years, that's CFA. So CFA is Chartered Financial Analyst. And it's designed to be an extremely rigorous way of getting financial advisors to, hang on just a sec. Yeah. Around the corner. Lights on the wall there. And then to the right. Sorry.
All good.
Yeah. So so that was the CFA. And then after I got that, now the CFA, one thing about that is it does, it's really good for investments, but not much else. So very, very narrow. You know a lot about investments, but like if you want me to break down a balance sheet for you, I can tell you everything about it. But then people would say, oh, good for you. You got this nice credential. You're very smart. That's wonderful. When should I take Social Security? And I said, I don't know. Like they don't teach you that. So like people would be like, I thought you were smart. Like, well, where do I figure that out? And that's where the CFP came from, is So the CFA is the gold standard for investment analysis, and the CFP is the gold standard for financial planning. I decided to get both. And so now I have both. And then the other letters, what happened there, well, that's the CDFA, that's the Chartered Divorce Financial Analyst, which that's a really niche designation. It wasn't anything I was like, I'm not divorced.
Right.
It's not something that I had a lot of experience with, but the thing that occurred to me was that, I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
The thing that occurred to me was I didn't have a lot going on, and the guys in the office were like, hey, you know what? You got time on your hands. How would you like to earn another credential? I was like, ooh, I'd love more letters. So that's where the third one came from.
More letters.
Yeah.
I'm seriously impressed. And you are very smart, man. It's crazy. So the reason you're on this show is because you have a child with disabilities.
That's right.
And that is what I'm trying to do is hear the stories of dads specifically who have kids with disabilities, because I feel like dads are just, man, we are stubborn and we're hard to get to. I had a dad tell me once, I've got enough friends. I don't need any more. And I was like, wow, that's okay. Kind of a weird response, but no one likes a bragger.
I don't have friends, so how about that?
So,
they're on other ends of the spectrum.
But they're just like this hidden gem, I feel like, in the dark. And I want to pull them out. I want to hear their stories, because I feel like we can help other dads by sharing our story, as simple as it is.
Yeah.
So let's start from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about your family, and then we'll get into the diagnosis a little bit after that.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm originally from Hopkins. It's a very small town between Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo. And I went off to University of Michigan. That's where I met my wife. We met at a party, and I fell in love with her instantly. Like, it was love at first sight for me. It was not for her. And so,
oh my gosh,
that was awkward. And then it wasn't, and then it was great. It just took a little bit of time. And, I told her that I could help her study. She said she was taking this interest rate class. She was studying teaching. I was studying economics. And so she says, well, I got this class. I don't know. I'm not very, it's interest rates. I'm like, oh, I know everything about interest rates. Bring it over. I'll help you study. And she brought over this book, and I was like, I don't know what class you're in, but I've never seen anything like this before. You need to get out, But the one thing I did right was I bought her flowers, and I knew she would not like roses or carnations. So I bought her wildflowers, and that turned out to be, all of a sudden she was like, this one's watch. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't just say he likes me. He also is kind of like paying attention. So
you had some game.
Wow.
I hear you.
I only needed that much, and that was it. Yeah, I spent it all. I had just a very small stake when I walked into the casino. I put it on double green zeros, and it worked out. So
your looks can only get you so far.
No, yeah, they really can't. I don't have a ton to go on there. It's just, you get inspiration. I feel like I have to follow the inspiration, right? Like, we were talking at the last event, right? And then, like, why are we even here, right? We were talking at the last event, and you had mentioned you were working on this, and I was like, I had to just say, hey, look, I don't know if you're looking for somebody, but if you want a safe person to talk to, hey, let's do this, and here we are. You just got to honor the, I don't know what the plan is. I'm just
for sure
going. So after that, graduated. So we were engaged our senior year of college, and she had student teaching. So we ended up graduating like in December. Now, her dad had got cancer, and he passed away shortly before we got engaged. Bob passed away. Then we graduated. Then we got married a few months after that. And I had a degree in economics. I didn't know anybody. We went to live by her mom in Owasso, which is a town I wasn't familiar with before. It's a big town up by Flint, between Flint and Lansing. And I started working for the Department of Corrections as a sales rep, which is like the weirdest resume line item in the world. It's what happens when you don't know anybody, I guess. So it was, I did not like working for the state. So I made a plan to retire early. And so when I did that, I started talking to some of the people there. And one of the guys said, "Oh, well, if you're going to do that, you ought to learn to day trade commodities." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." I mean, I was 22. Why not? Right? Like,
Right.
everything's cool. Yeah, let's do it. So remember I told you that brain, development thing?
Yep.
22 before, right? Before, right? So it was just like, okay, cool. We trade commodities. So started doing that. And I say, hey, you know what? If we get good at this, we ought to just open a hedge fund and
Yeah.
we can be done working for the Department of Corrections. We don't need this anymore. And so that was when I talked to my uncle, and I told him what I was up to, and he's like, I thought you were working for the state. I'm like, oh, I don't like working for the state. I want to trade commodities. He's like, how would you like to learn about stocks and bonds? I was like, okay. So that's how I got from selling for the Department of Corrections to investment advice. And it's just,
Wow.
so he hired me to start doing that. And that was 2004. Then my son was born right at that same time. My
Yeah.
first son. So David was born then. And then we moved back to Grand Rapids from the Owasso area in 2006. And right after we did, Thomas was born. Now, when Thomas was born, there was blood clots in the placenta. We didn't know any of this at the time, but what
Okay.
we noticed was Kath woke up in the morning and she said, "Well, it's weird. He didn't move. Normally, babies move certain times of the day. They're more
Right.
active. So, like, he didn't move last night." And I was like, "Oh, that's it was odd, but nothing to be scared of. I mean, kids change too. So sometimes they move
Right.
at this time and then they change and it's all different. I don't know. Or they do a loop or something and well, whatever. Anyhow, so that morning she still hadn't felt him and she laid down. She drank some sugar water, still wasn't moving. So she calls the hospital and says,
Man.
they want me to come in. So we go in and we did not realize this. We weren't thinking we're going to have a baby today. We didn't have a
Right.
name picked out. Like, we knew nothing, right? It's 34 weeks. We got time. And they said, you need to get the baby out now. I was like,
Oh boy.
well, now?
Buckle up.
Yeah, the OR is ready. We need you to go now. We're like, this sounds serious. And they're like, yeah, baby's not doing well. Like, all right, here we go.
Wow.
And so when he was born, they put the little bracelets on him, said
Right.
baby boy Hodge. We didn't know what we were going to call him. And we ended up naming him Thomas. And that was the weirdest thing too, because we never even talked about that name. But when he was born, Kath said, so David, my first son, he was an emergency C-section. He's got a big head. And so just would not fit. Right.
Yeah.
So like, we're going to take him another way. Okay, great. So they pull him out. But I was in the room for that. They took their time. Everyone was chatting and talking and, oh yeah, another dad in the job. With
Right.
Thomas, no talk whatsoever. The only thing she remembers hearing in the OR was them counting the tools, that were on.
Wow.
And they were checking machines and various things. And as soon as he came out and they saw he had color, the whole mood of the room changed and everybody was like, oh, thank God, what a relief. And she was like, they don't tell you any of this stuff going in, but like they actually thought he was going to die. I mean, he was that close. So we found out later the placenta was actually, it was so full of clots that it was actually crunchy. And so there was no blood going to his brain at all. And that's what happened. So he has cerebral palsy, which there's 2 headband shaped strips of brain.
Yep.
For and
corpus callosum.
That's right. So one part of your brain tells your muscles what to do. The other, your muscles tell your brain, the proprioception tells your brain what your muscles are doing. Both are damaged. So he has quad spastic cerebral palsy. It took us months to get a diagnosis, which that's not a fault on anybody. It just takes time. They don't do the things they're supposed to do at the time they're supposed to do them. And then they're like, what's going on? But he had a pretty grim diagnosis. They said probably nonverbal,
Wow.
not quite vegetative, but and you've met him,
he couldn't be more
verbal.
more verbal. I'm like, awesome. Like, he's like, so what's the word? I don't know. It's just so good at communicating.
Well, it's crazy. Like, here's this kid who, he knows he's almost 18 years old. He knows his life's different. He knows it's hard. He knows how people see him. He's a kid in a power wheelchair. And, the reactions go from people ignoring him or like, they don't say rude things very often, but like sometimes they do, all the way to like infantilizing or saying, hey buddy, what's going
Right.
on over here? And he's like, well, what do you think about the election? And I was like, well, wait a minute, you know? And,
Yeah.
and I feel like, but you look at him and it's like, I say this to Cass sometimes, to be like, if you look at the people in the four of us in the family, like who is the happiest and
Mhm.
most confident member of our family? Hands down, it's Thomas. Like
Man.
just,
Man.
just he is all in on life.
Yeah.
Whatever is up right now, he's in 100%. There's no
Do you
holding back.
do you find that happening a lot where people will associate, okay, he obviously has a disability, so I have to talk to him down here on this level
Mhm.
because there's no possible way, that he could understand. But then he just like smacks that right in the face, and he's
Yeah, and, like I can't blame him either. I gotta say, like until
articulate. That's what I was gonna say. He's
oh yeah,
so articulate.
yeah, he's big on vocabulary and like articulating. Like he loves
Oh,
knowing what new words mean. So yeah, he's a lot of fun to talk to. He does have what we call Thomas logic, which it only makes sense in his head, but he is convinced this is the way it is. So
yes.
maybe we all have. I don't know. Maybe it's just a mirror to the world. I don't know. But it's
Right.
one of those things where we're like, because people would say they're like, well, how much is it affecting him? And we're like, it's hard to tell. Like the
Yeah.
physical stuff, obviously very much. The mental stuff, he seems pretty good, but like there's things that are hard. I mean, like babies, they pick things up and they roll them around in their hands. They touch
Right.
things. When he first got his power wheelchair, the very first thing he did at Mary Free Bed is he just beelined it for the wall, and we're like, oh my god, like you're thinking, oh no, like here's this piece of machinery, he's going to destroy it. No,
Right.
he
They're
just
so cheap too.
oh yeah, right. It's only like 25 grand, no biggie. So he stops right there at the wall, and he reaches over and he starts like touching the wall. And I was like, what's he doing? And he takes off again and he's heading right for the table. I'm like, he's going to hit the table. And he stops right by the
Yeah.
table. And he reaches out and he touches the table, and he reaches over and he touches the lampshade. I was like, oh
Wow.
my God, he's wanted to touch this stuff all along. And we're
Oh my
grown-ups. I mean, like, we
gosh.
don't like
Yeah.
I'm not curious what that lamp feels like, right? Like we're not stopping and touching it. But kids,
Yeah.
oh, they're into everything. And he was just now at the age of 6, finally
Okay.
able to start like
Yeah.
grabbing. So yeah, I mean, there's big chunks of stuff that like are they just don't really compute the same way. But like
Right.
he is surprising, and I didn't, like I say, before this happened in our family, I would have never, it wasn't anything I had like any understanding or interest in, so I totally sympathize. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to know, and everyone's different, so you can't say like, oh, this is what it's like for kids with CP, because some kids with CP, their life is totally different.
Did
And
you
it's like
know anybody in your world before
there was
before your
one
son?
there was one guy I knew of in my high school who had cerebral palsy. And I didn't know that's what he had, but I
Okay.
recognized it after. His name was Andrew Echek, and he was like 5 years younger than me. He actually goes to our church, so I see him every once in a while.
To this day?
Yeah, weird
Wow.
coincidence. Another guy from
Wow.
Hopkins. He just happens to live in our neighborhood and goes to the same church. So, but yeah, Andrew's probably like 40 now.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and like growing up, like he was in class with everybody else, but like he needed canes to walk, and his
Okay.
feet would turn inward. And I don't remember if he had braces on his legs or not, but like the only thing I do remember is it was an old building, and there was a spot where there was stairs, and they had to like cover it with a ramp
Oh,
because
wow.
I mean this was the 90s. This should have
Yeah,
been done a long time ago, but they didn't. So now it's like, we really do need to have a ramp here, and
for
so
sure.
they covered that the stairs up. But other than that, I didn't. Andrew was a lot younger than me. I didn't know him, and I realize now, having Thomas, like if you don't know, you just kind of like take a step back. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like it's almost like you feel like you're taking a risk to, or maybe you don't want to feel like you're trying to be a friend or something. You don't want to feel like you're condescending
Yeah.
to somebody
Yeah.
either. So it's kind of you just say, I'll just not engage.
Right.
So
Wow. So you had like a very, very limited idea of cerebral palsy before, but
oh yeah,
you, I
nothing.
mean, if you had to write a paper about it, you'd be on the struggle bus. Yeah.
I wouldn't
So
know anything about it. It
yeah,
would sound like some kind of like a disability, but that I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about what it was. Just guessing cerebral.
right.
I would guess it has something to do with the brain, but wouldn't know anything. Literally, that's it. Nothing else.
How old was David when Thomas was born?
Not quite two.
Okay, and then I'm assuming you're in the NICU. How
Mhm.
long was that?
2 weeks.
2 weeks in the NICU.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that
So,
like? That the the back and forth, the hospital, the home,
yeah.
the job. P.S. You still
Oh,
have.
yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, like, job was pretty good. I mean, I was working with my uncle at the time, and he was pretty good. He knew there was a lot going on and a lot to juggle. So I was available to work, but also I was at the hospital a lot, and Kath and I would switch. Kath took the brunt of it. I mean, she had,
Okay.
an almost 2-year-old. They allowed him to come into the NICU. Thomas was in a very, he was in kind of a separate, he was in the NICU for like 2 or 3 days, and then he was out in a separate little, uh, he was in a room with another kid,
Oh,
for
okay.
most of it. But the thing I remember most about the hospital was a few things. First, it was a hospital downtown Grand Rapids, so it was the DeVos Children's Hospital, and one of the things I remember was um, feeling like really fortunate in a couple ways, and I wouldn't have said that was really my temperament before, but like when he was first born and they wheeled him out, he's just in this little box,
Mhm.
and they're going to take him to the NICU like now. Like you can
Yeah.
say hi, but it's time to go. And so I just, said hello to him and stuff. And right in that moment, there's a choice, right? The choice is, oh my God, what's wrong with him? Or thank
Mhm.
God he's alive. And
Right.
I was like, oh, he's alive. This is fantastic, and he's right here. He's okay, and they're going to take care of him. And then the same thing happened at 34 weeks. The big thing they're not sure of, that's when the nursing reflex begins with babies. So they thought
Uh,
he might be tube fed, and like they were all prepared for that. But they said, well,
okay.
let's see if he can latch. And kid was a champ. He was on the latch from the drop. So he
Wow.
he picked it right up. And the other thing is his temperature would not stabilize. It would drop pretty low. I mean, like low, like 91, 92, 93 degrees. It would, I mean, like abnormally low.
Okay.
And, I remember he was so skinny when he was born. But yeah, as far as a lot of the back and forth, I mean, basically it was kind of a blur to me. We were just downtown all the time. I remember
Yeah.
Kath was grateful when I could be there to watch David. I think my mother-in-law, Rosemary, she took some time off too.
Mhm.
She was working for the state still at the time, and then she took a little bit of time off or was about to retire. It was pretty close. She had some sick time banked, and then she would come by. I remember the very night he was born, Rosemary came because I was going to stay with Kath, and then where's David going to be? My
Yeah.
my older my older son, and Rosemary came and took him back to the house, and she stayed for a while too. So it was
Wow.
little bits and pieces, but it was just a blur. Like we didn't have a
You
ton of help, but we got through it. And he wasn't in there super. I mean, 2 weeks is like if I told you you had to be at the hospital every day for the next 2 weeks, it would seem inconvenient at the time.
yeah,
It was. It's just what you had.
right. Yeah, I can totally that's I think with Briella, we were just about 2 weeks, maybe a touch over,
Yeah.
but still, that's like, we had a couple of rooms down was another kid that I just remember seeing a Christmas tree in the
Oh,
room, and it's like, it just hits. It hits
yeah.
different. You're like, that's serious, man.
Yeah, the girl that Thomas was sharing the room with was like 3, 4 months old, and I
Mhm.
remember being amazed at how loud that girl would cry. Like when she cried, the
Oh,
whole
wow.
crib would shake, and I was like, "Oh wow, she's been here a while."
Wow. So you you were going back and forth. Things were kind of, a blur, like you said. What do you feel like in terms of like your community? You say you didn't have a ton of support, but like, did you with your church or with family or neighbors? How do you feel like your community came around you?
Um, yeah, we're pretty. I would say we're pretty. I would say it's kind of like we're like I feel like we're an island, just kind of in that regard. At that time, Kath and I were both lapsed Catholics, so we weren't going to church at the
Okay.
time. There's really nothing there. As far as family, um, both my parents and her parents were still working at the time, so it was
Yeah.
like some support, but mainly it was
Right.
just like, yeah, it was just and it's
Wow.
kind of us too, we always tend to just kind of sail our own direction, and I would say
Okay.
not a ton of, and
Yeah.
that's not normal. I know a lot of other people, they kind of have a little bit more closeness with other people, and we just,
Right.
for various reasons, we just never have.
Yeah. When do you feel like I have a lot of questions, I hope you don't mind, but when do you feel like your faith kind of got reignited, and then how'd you navigate your faith in terms of like dealing with Thomas
Mm.
and kind of having that make sense and be okay with it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So that actually happened later. So
Okay.
we had a weird thing with my older son. After we moved, it was like shortly before, after, and during Thomas being born and his first year of life, which that is also a blur. Um, my older son, Kath and I, we were born, we're called cradle Catholics. We were born there, raised in the tradition, but like
Yeah.
by the time we were confirmed, both of us were like, we weren't married in the Catholic Church. We
Okay.
just, we were married in a congregational church, and we were married in a church, but not
Yeah.
Catholic church. We never had the boys baptized. I hadn't been to mass in uh, quite a while. As soon as I could stop going, I did. As
Oh,
soon as I
okay.
got to college, I think I went to one mass there, and that was it. I just never went again. Um, we got married, and both of us kind of had the same view of things. And I remember David would come to us as just this. I mean, he was little. He was maybe like 1 or 2 years old, and he would come to us and say the craziest things like, um, "Angels are beautiful." Like,
Whoa.
that's nice, right? Or heaven's a real place. You just can't see it. I love God. I love Jesus.
Wow.
Well, like, I'm thinking, I love that Kath is teaching him this stuff, and she's like, "Oh, I thought that was you." I'm like,
You're blaming each
"Oh,
other.
okay." So it kind of goes back to that 25-year thing.
Right.
Like the brain development just kind of was clicking right around that time. I was 26 years old when Thomas was born. So it was like I was just starting to kind of set direction and think about life and all that. And I thought, you know what? I never gave the faith a chance. I never read the Bible, never paid
Okay.
attention to church. I remember one time I was driving home from somewhere, and I was like, I wonder if someone asked me, so what do you believe? Like, as a Christian, what do you believe? And I said,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know how to answer the question. And all of a sudden it hit me. We say the Nicene Creed every week in Mass.
Mm,
It's like, at the time it was we, but it was like, we believe in one God, the Father
right.
Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. I'm like, we're literally saying the words. This is what we
Yeah.
believe. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to start listening. You know what I mean? So it was a like it was like fits and starts. I read the Bible front to back, just straight through, Old Testament, Genesis, all the way to
Really
Revelation. Yeah, and then I was like, well,
like it.
I was coming at it from a place of arrogance. I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this thing out. But behind it too, there was like a little bit of humility as well, because I was like, kids when they're little, they love you for no good reason at all. I remember one time we were at the house, and our porch had a couple steep steps. It was about chest high, so there's like 5 steps, all concrete. And he was not in an age where he could safely go up and down. We never let him touch those stairs.
Yeah.
I just held out my hands, said like, "Come to me," and he just walked right into him. And I picked him up and carried him away. And then afterwards, I was like, okay, like if like, that right there was an act of faith that I could not equal. If somebody said, "Hey, I got you. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it," you don't worry about those concrete steps that'll kill you if you fall down. I'm like, I got you. It's all good. I would negotiate. I'd be like, well, how good are we here? You know what I mean?
Right. I have a
He
couple
never,
of follow-up questions.
yeah. He's like, there's my dad. I love him. He would never let anything bad happen to me. I'm
Yeah.
walking. Just that the simple act of that, right? And he was the same way. Like kids, they just love for no good reason. They just love. And when he's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, he's going to do things just because I said so. If I tell him this is what we're going to believe, he won't question it at all. But there will come a day where he does.
For
And
sure. Yeah.
I had done none of the work to be ready to be a dad to somebody who was going to need better answers at
Wow.
13, 15, 20. And I thought, I really got to get the hang of this. So some humility, but also some arrogance of saying, I'm just going to read this and figure it all out,
I'll
and
just
then
read this little book.
yeah,
No
there's no
big
test
deal.
or anything at the end. I like reading. It's cool. You learn a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
it's you see it in a new light. And then I got to the end and I was like, I better do this again. So I went through it a little more slowly the second time. And
Wow.
I was going to mass. We got the marriage blessed. We got the kids baptized. I mean, we kind of did the package deal.
Okay.
And that's where that it all just kind of, so we're practicing Catholics now. And
That's
as
great.
far as like the faith and Thomas and that, I mean, I would say if anything, the struggles and challenges and stuff that Thomas goes through, I can understand why it challenges people's faith.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it had the opposite effect. It made it much, much easier to have faith and to believe that everything is going to be okay and it's in God's hands. And there's been worse things that have happened in history. And even if we never get to the bottom of this, in his lifetime, it still means something. And,
Right.
we have a God that so loved us that he assumed our form as Christ and he bears our sufferings with us. Like there's nothing
I love it.
he can't be a part of. So I would say that it just, there's an answer there, it's not like rational. Okay. It's not scientific. It's not going to boil down to the right thing. Okay. But like, as far as me having peace with it, yeah, total peace with it. Like I say, from the very drop, he's alive.
That's huge. Because you don't always have that. Sometimes you've got guys that are struggling with this diagnosis and then struggling with their concept of God and is he good? I mean, is that even possible right now? Right. Then you've got the why question, and it just goes on and on and on, and you kind of go into this deep, dark hole. And then being a guy, you kind of just hang out there because you're like, I'll figure it out.
I'm gonna tough it out. Yeah, right.
Then you don't. Yeah, and it affects your entire family. I mean, it's not just a you situation. It goes right to your wife and your kids, and so it's super important.
I would say that there's like I say, I can understand it, why people would struggle. It makes perfect sense. There's questions I can't answer, like if God's all powerful, how could he let something like this happen? If God loves us like a father, how come he doesn't just heal everybody? Why does he let any of this happen? And I don't have good answers, but to me, they're not even like, it's like, remember there's a question where people say, well, if God's all powerful, can he make a rock that's too heavy for him to lift? Or can he break his own rules? And it's like, I mean, those questions don't even make sense for the sense of what God is, It'd be like saying, well, can your Blu-ray player, play cassette tapes? It's like, you wouldn't even think to ask the question. Like it's not even the same. Or make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's like, it's not, it doesn't even, there's nothing there that's rationally grounded. And so I feel like I get the question and I get why it's a hard question, but I feel like it doesn't even occur to me to ask things like that because it doesn't even enter into my worldview,
Gotcha.
Like it's a mystery. Sorry. I don't have an answer.
Yeah. I think I mean, I was a pastor and I feel like, the stereotype is like, well, pastors don't have problems and they don't struggle or have any doubts whatsoever. And I was like, I'm in trouble because
not just yours, but everyone else's too, I would think.
Exactly. So I mean, there's been times where I've like had some serious talks with God. There's been times where I've screamed in the car at God, and just like, let him have it.
Yeah.
But I end up not staying there, which is good. One of my favorite quotes is, it's okay to not be okay. It's not okay to stay that way. And I think that's where the problem happens, is that when we don't talk about it or we don't get help, then it just causes all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
How was your Catherine's faith in terms of where yours was? Did you guys kind of um was she reading the Bible at the same time too?
No, she
And
never has. No,
okay,
I would say we're not in totally different places, but we're in pretty different places. We didn't hit the same things at the same time.
okay,
I
gotcha.
changed. I changed. She evolved. How about that?
Okay, all right.
So, yeah,
And how do
we're
you?
in different places, but it's not a source of tension for
Yeah,
us. I don't impose on her. I try to be respectful. I was in a different place for a long time,
right.
and she'll walk her own way there, or wherever she ends up. It's fine. We'll
Yeah,
be together, but if we try to impose on each other, that won't be any good.
right, right. So I've seen you guys at a few events, and from what I can tell now, we're out in public, so things are different.
We're on our
But
best behavior.
it seems like you guys have a good you're a good team. That's what it seems like to me. So what do you feel like you guys are good at that makes you guys work well together for your situation and the things that you're dealing with day to day?
Yeah. Um, I think one of the things that helps right off the bat, okay, is she's really good at it. She I wouldn't say like super mom is not the right term, okay, but it gets us into the ball field where what she's really dedicated her life to is making sure that if there was one thing she didn't want to have to wonder at the end of her life, regret minimization type of thing, is
Yeah.
could I have been a better mom? Like
Mm,
that, she's never gonna like that, like
yeah.
without a doubt. Like she may have little things here and there that she wishes she'd have done a little differently, but
Yeah.
I mean, she's relentless on being the best mom she can be. And so, like, listening to everything. She told me one time, she says, you know, I read this once and I think it makes sense because at the time the kids were really little and
Mhm.
little kids have so many things they want to tell you. And
Right.
she would call me every once in a while because she was staying home, and the kids were there. She's like, I just need to hear an adult voice for like 10 minutes, and then I'll be ready to go back into it. But like I
Wow.
need a little break from kid. You just start going crazy. And she was really all in though. And she says, if you listen to them when they're little, they'll talk to you when they get older
Mm,
because
I like that.
you're gonna want to know the important stuff, right? When they're teenagers, you're
Yeah.
gonna want them to be able to talk to you and trust you. And she said, if you want that, you got to listen to them when they're little because they've always been telling you the important things. When they're three
No,
and
that's
5 years
good.
old, it's the
Yeah.
toast popped up. Hey, look, I built a block city, or
Right.
this is my truck, or whatever. There and I tested this immediately. I was like, there is no way that my especially David, he was very, very talkative. And I said, there's no way he's only telling us the important things because he says so many things that are not important. And
Yeah.
so one time he runs up and he's like, Dad, 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 Dad. I'm like, okay, David, hang on just a second. First, is what you're about to tell me important? He says, oh, yes, it is important. Like he is positive it's important. Okay, David, what is it? He's like, your toast is ready. And he runs
Oh
off. I'm like,
my
oh,
gosh.
okay.
Very serious.
He's yep. He's sure of it though. Like this is like so urgent. You need to know this right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and so having that level of commitment from her, and I guess kind of like having her have that be the center of her life. That's the first thing. And
Yeah.
so I consider myself in relation to that as, how do I help and support? And, when I get home, I've worked all day by the time I get home, but so is she,
Yep.
she's been working all day too. So, um, we turn into slightly different parents. She takes on, we homeschool. She has done
Mhm.
all of the homeschooling. She takes on a lot of the home, really, a happy and beautiful home.
Yeah.
That is 100% on her. And, I help. I do the dishes. I sweep the floors. I do the laundry. Whatever I can to help out. But I always felt it like, how can I help her? Or what are the things like? We both hate washing dishes. I end up doing it. It's fine. It's good. It's how I
Yeah.
contribute. And then making sure that whenever, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we would go to the Wyoming Public Library every night, like 3, 4, 5 nights a week. We found
Wow.
out, actually, I think we were the first family to figure out what the limit is on how many books you could check out.
Oh,
100. You can check out 100 books before you hit the limit, and you can't check out any more books. Now, they'll let you check out more books, but you have to go see somebody.
that's
And
a lot.
yeah, it was a weird error message, because all of a sudden we're just check, and then one scan. What the heck is going on here? So we checked out, we went up to the desk, and they're like, "Huh, this is a weird error." Called someone else over, like, "Oh, you have over 100 items." It's like, "Yeah," and
Yeah.
they're like, "You can't do that."
Jeez.
Like, okay.
Your pictures on the wall behind the desk.
We returned them on time. We were there all the time, you know. I mean, but yeah, we were super users of the library. We've visited every single Kent District Library, every single Grand Rapids Public Library. We've been to all of them, and but that was part of it. Like, kids, like, the adventures didn't need to be big, but I would grab the kids. We would go.
Right.
Maybe we need to go to the hardware store. Maybe we just need to do a little grocery shopping or whatever. But like, giving her time to like decompress was so important. And, I was able to have fun too. It wasn't like it was like drudgery and suffering. And, it could have been anything. We could have watched sports together. We could have been playing sports together. We could have been building forts in the backyard, whatever it is,
Yeah.
Kids are easy. And in that respect, they're always up for something, up to a point. And then they're not. But like the first 12 years or so, pretty sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I would totally agree with that. So you guys have a son with a significant diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is your go-to help when it comes to your mental game? Because for me, I feel like, and I'm not saying you've got it figured out. I'm just saying what helps you. Like, what is there something you have a routine? Do you have something that you keep in your pocket that you can go to or do that is just your secret sauce for that? Because it's that to me is like it's a huge thing in this life we're living, and it's not just disabilities, but disabilities is a big topic for mental health. And so how do you do that?
Well, a couple things come to mind. I mean, like, just for me personally, I would say one thing is to like do something constructive about it. So like with Thomas, one of the things we would always do is we would always stretch. If nothing else, every night we would end up stretching a little bit. And so that was like something positive we could do every day, rain or shine.
Yeah.
It felt like we were making a positive difference towards his diagnosis, taking it head on, even if it was just making sure that his hips didn't pop out of socket. That was something else I learned. Like with cerebral palsy, one of the things you learn is that like your hip bones, like the pelvis, it's not formed until you stand on it and run around. So if you're not standing and running around, which a lot of kids with CP don't do that, those cups never form. And so your femur will just float out of place. So by stretching, we were able to like kind of start locking those in. So I'd say that was one thing that was big, is feeling like we might not be able to solve every problem, but we can do something, and we're going to do that thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's just, you feel like, look, I don't have control. We don't have any control.
Yeah. And you honestly can't do everything.
I
mean,
but we can do
not
one
a great
thing.
goal.
We can do something. Yeah. No, that's going to kill you. Another thing I would say that, like, I read a lot, and then I'd say I have a pretty active, I hesitate to call it a prayer life because I don't really say much, but there's something I've been working on lately that's been just wonderful. Is called contemplative prayer. And it's basically you just sit there, God's doing all the work. So you just sit there and say, okay, one of the things I learned over the last year, which, I wouldn't have guessed it. Okay. But like, I had a lot of anger, like, so much so that you can classify it. There's frustration, there's simmering, there's bursts of rage, like there's all different types of angers. Right. And I had a lot, and I wouldn't have guessed it about myself, but I am, it's my nature to have that. And so one of the things that, it's really just consenting to God's presence within you. God's been knocking at the door this whole time. This is me just sitting still for 20 minutes and saying, okay, come on in, do what you will.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'll just sit here, and it's not like it's not this earth-shattering thing. It's like an evolution that's so subtle you don't even realize what's happening. And then but things are happening. All of a sudden
Right.
I had a realization. I'm like, I have a
Hmm.
lot of anger, like that's weird,
Wow.
odd, right? But also I have a lot of anger, but I'm not angry about it. You know what I mean? It's just like having a new level of understanding. It's like the
Yeah.
difference between seeing a tornado on television and being in the middle of a tornado. When you're in the middle of a tornado, it's a totally different experience than being able to step back and say, huh,
Right.
I have a lot of anger, when you're just
Yeah.
angry, that's all there is, but then if you see it from a distance, it's like, you feel some sympathy, but you don't feel like you have to indulge in it, so the feeling's
Right.
still there. It's just not anything I need to feel compelled to do anything about. Um,
So how's that play out for you? Is that like a habit you have, like in the morning, at night? You do the car
both.
ride to work?
First and last thing of the day. Yeah. And
Okay.
then, there's people, Thomas Keating has a long series of videos that I'm working my way through. Um, there's a number of people that have been active in that tradition, and it's just layers of consciousness. Basically, like there's more to it too, because like if there's anger, right? Anger or wrath is the negative, the sin or whatever you want to call it, as
Yeah.
opposed, you hear that?
This
It's pretty
is
loud
so
here.
it's funny. Dave and I both have construction projects happening all around us at the same time. So, which is a good representation of our life, right? Constant
Yep.
chaos.
Here I am helping out.
So it's just too
This is,
good.
yeah, this is it. This is real life. So like,
It's so funny. I love
so
it. It couldn't be
the
more
wrath is
perfect.
there, right? The wrath is there, but what it's doing is as much as I'm indulging in the wrath and going down, 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 right? That's also blocking the energy that would go the total opposite direction, the love, the acceptance, or whatever the
Yeah.
opposite of wrath is. It's so by removing more and more and letting go of the wrath and the need to feel it and the need to do something about it. If I feel angry,
Mhm.
I'm going to do something about it. The more I let go, the more that the energy goes in the opposite direction. So there's like
Yeah.
it's like who are you meant to be versus, you know,
Yeah, that's a really great discipline that you do beginning and ending. I like that you do it at, both those times. It's awesome.
yeah. Normally I fall asleep on the ending one too. I mean, it's way not perfect. It's definitely
No,
not.
seems like a great way to fall asleep. So let me ask you this, and then we'll wrap it up and go see what's going on above us. What what advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know now about the disability world, and all the wisdom you have now that your frontal cortex is has come
Yeah.
together?
Now that that's all, now that my brain's working, yeah, right.
I didn't say it like that, but what
No,
would
it's
you tell yourself?
true.
What advice would you give yourself to the younger Dave, when you're just holding your 34-week-old baby?
Yeah. I mean, I would say a few things. I would say, you know, a lot of things are going to seem important along the way. And it could be anything. Could be anything. It could be something at work. Could be
Yeah.
something existential at home. Could be a leaking pipe or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that's going to seem urgently important, but um, the most important thing is right here, right now, at this moment, and the people that are in your life.
Yeah, I
That's
like that.
that's it. I mean, there's nothing else, and
Right.
um, don't ever put one before the other. Just keep these
Yeah.
people. These are the people that God's put in your life. This is what you're meant to do right here. This is it. So and thankfully, I would say that's the advice I've followed most of the time. I wish I would have been a little more attentive to being. I feel like I've evolved as a dad into a better dad over time.
Good.
It's good. I wish I'd gotten there a little earlier. The kids knew me probably when I was a little more of a work in progress than I care to admit, but that's
Yeah.
done
But
is
it's cool
done.
they get to see that growth along the way.
I guess there is some truth to that, knowing that otherwise they might have ended up with some kind of a perfection complex or something, because
Yeah.
I'm pretty hard on myself. I would say that's another thing too. Just I would tell myself not to be too hard on myself. It's very, very easy for me to look at a situation and say, okay, if I don't like something, what did I do wrong? How did I screw this up? How am I going to make sure this doesn't happen again? What am I going to do to take responsibility here and make things better? And that's not always my place, as to be humble and just say, hey, look, you're here for a reason. Just let it play out. You will know what trust. You will know what to do when the time comes. I mean, the fact that my wife and I are married is ridiculous, really. I mean, I fell in love immediately. And then she had no interest. And then from there, we're married and we have kids. I mean, like, how does that happen? That can only happen. It's nothing I did, I was just cooperating all along.
Well, the wildflowers didn't hurt anything.
It was the first right thing I did. And from there, and it was noticed and appreciated.
Right.
Yeah. Keep in mind that was the only right thing I did that day. I took one look at her homework and said, I cannot help you. You are so in trouble in this class. I don't know anybody that can help you. I'm sorry. This is a terrible class. So,
I love it. Well, that's good. I appreciate your honesty with these questions. I know it's not always the easiest thing, but you're doing awesome. I appreciate you not giving up as a dad, sticking with it, staying in the game. The stats aren't great for marriages when you have a kid with disability, and you guys are putting in the work, making it happen. And I think that doesn't go unnoticed to a lot of people. So thanks for being open today and willing to share a little bit of your story. I know there's so much more.
Well,
but
I will say one other thing. At one time we went to a wedding, the four of us. One of Kath's friends got married, and we were at the reception, and we like to dance. So as soon as the DJ fired up, we were some of the first people on the floor. And
all four of you?
All four.
Okay.
All four of us. And so Thomas, he buzzed out to the floor in his chair, and then we took him out and I held him. He can't stand necessarily all on his own, but if you plop him down, his legs will stiffen up and he'll sway around and stuff.
Right.
And so I remember we just pulled him out of the chair and we started dancing.
That's so great.
We didn't think anything of it. This is just what we do, But I guess when I think back on it, I kind of realize that it's just one of those moments, if you did a highlight reel of life, that'd be one of them.
Yeah.
We're just all together and we're looking to have fun.
Right. No, that's so, it's like this. It's like your typical normal family all on the dance floor. What's your best dance move for you personally?
They're terrible. They're absolutely awful. Yeah. So the kids know. I think they put a GIF of me on one of their phones. They were like, I don't know what we call it, the marionette dance. It's kind of involves arms and legs, and it's awful.
I'm gonna need to see that. I'm gonna ask Thomas next time I see him.
He will show you. It's on. Yeah, it's his lock screen. So as soon as you open the screen, there's me in my sweatpants doing the marionette. So.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Man. Well, Dave, I appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining me, and look forward to connecting with you a lot more.
Sweet. Thanks a lot, Andy. Appreciate it. See you around, huh?
All right. Take care.
Take care.